I never meant to linger. I told myself that every time I leaned against the railing of the back porch, letting the late afternoon sun strike the edges of her hair just so. But the truth was, I couldn't leave, couldn't tear myself away from the way she existed in that quiet space between the world and me. She was folding laundry, her hands moving with a kind of effortless grace that made ordinary cotton shirts look like silk. Her mid-40s had shaped her face into something soft yet knowing, a quiet elegance that didn't need to announce itself. And yet, for a moment, I caught her looking up, her eyes meeting mine with a flash of surprise, and something else, something that lingered like smoke, faint but tangible. "Don't just stand there," she said lightly, her voice brushing against me like a feather. Not a reprimand, more an acknowledgement that I was, predictably, here again. I stepped a fraction closer, careful not to close the space she seemed to guard. "I thought I'd check if the tea was ready," I said, though my words felt hollow even to me. My gaze drifted to the line of her neck, the curve of her shoulder, as she bent to retrieve a basket. My fingers twitched with the small impulse to reach, to brush against her hand, but I didn't. Not yet. The porch smelled faintly of cedar and laundry detergent, a clean warmth that felt like it belonged only to her. A breeze stirred, catching a loose strand of her hair, and I wanted, more than I wanted anything, to tuck it behind her ear, to watch her smile when I did. Instead, I just watched. My stomach knotted in a familiar ache, a mix of anticipation and something heavier I didn't want to name. She straightened, turning to face me fully, and for a heartbeat, the world outside the porch fell away. I noticed how her eyes softened, but there was a flicker of hesitation in the tilt of her head. She was confident, undeniably, but not without the shadows of her own reserve. And I was 20, unpracticed, and utterly consumed by her presence. Our hands brushed briefly as she passed me a folded towel. It was accidental, I think. But my fingers lingered a fraction too long, tracing the outline of her skin through cotton, and I swear I felt her inhale sharply. We didn't speak. Neither of us did. We didn't have to. The air between us was a conversation in its own right, one of restrained longing and careful curiosity. "You always come here looking for me," she said finally, almost in a whisper. Not accusing, but something else. Something intimate. My chest tightened. My mind raced to frame a response, but my throat went dry. I let the silence stretch instead, letting the words sink, linger, and burn. She shifted slightly, glancing toward the house, and for the first time since I'd arrived, a trace of hesitation softened her expression. My pulse hammered against my ribs, and I realized I wanted to stay in that moment forever, just watching, just existing in the narrow space that seemed only ours. And then, something moved inside the house. A door creaked open. Footsteps. The spell broke. She glanced at me quickly, eyes wide for just a second, a faint blush spreading across her cheeks. My hand hovered midair, still tingling from our earlier touch, and I wanted to ask her to stay, to not move, to not let the world in. But all I managed was a quiet, almost inaudible, "Are you okay?" Her lips parted, and the words she was about to say caught in her throat. The porch held its breath with us, waiting. I couldn't stop thinking about the way she looked at me, that fleeting mixture of curiosity and caution that had lingered in her eyes after the door opened. My fingers itched to trace the line of her arm again, to feel the warmth of her presence close enough to remember it with every inhale. But something in her, the subtle hesitation, the pause at the threshold, kept me from acting on it. I was 20, unsteady, and she was everything I wasn't, composed, knowing, and aware of the world in ways I had yet to understand. Her name was Marianne. I had learned it months ago, though her surname was a detail she carefully guarded. That itself told me something. She didn't share easily, didn't open doors for anyone without reason. And now I knew why. Marianne had been married once. Or twice, maybe? The details never mattered. The traces lingered in the way she held herself, the small, almost imperceptible tightness around her eyes when she laughed too easily, as though she were measuring the cost of each smile. She carried a quiet, contained vulnerability that only made me want her more. I remembered how she sometimes glanced at me, fingers brushing the edge of a cup, hair falling just over one shoulder, then quickly retreating behind her neat, professional posture. She lingered in my awareness, like a song stuck in my head I didn't dare play aloud. But then, a subtle reminder, the age difference. Mid-40s. Me, barely out of college. And the world outside the back porch, neighbors, family, expectations, loomed like a shadow I couldn't ignore. That shadow didn't matter when she was near, but the thought of it gnawed at me, reminding me that what I felt was complicated, delicate, perhaps dangerous. Still, I noticed her in ways I tried not to. The way her scarf slipped over her shoulder when she bent to water the plants. The almost imperceptible rise and fall of her chest when she laughed at something trivial I said. I caught myself staring once too long, heart thudding, and she didn't look away immediately. Instead, she let me watch, let me linger in the space between us, then gently stepped back. That pull and release, it was like gravity, subtle but impossible to ignore. She worked quietly on the porch, folding the same towel she'd handed me earlier, but now closer. Her elbow brushed mine. A jolt ran through me. I tried not to react. I swallowed hard. She glanced at me, lips curved in that knowing half-smile that suggested she felt the electricity too but would never admit it aloud. For a second, I imagined her leaning closer, letting our hands meet on purpose, but she didn't. Instead, she lifted the towel higher, fingers grazing her cheek briefly, a micro-gesture that spoke volumes in silence. "I've always liked quiet afternoons," she said, voice low, almost conversational, though her gaze was fixed somewhere just beyond me. "You notice things that most people miss." I swallowed again. That statement felt personal. Too personal. And yet I wanted to respond with something clever, something that didn't betray the storm inside me. "I notice a lot," I muttered too quickly, my fingers curling around the railing. Her eyes flicked to mine, and for a heartbeat, I saw the hint of amusement mixed with something I couldn't name, acknowledgement, maybe, or invitation. Then, without warning, she brushed my shoulder lightly as she stepped past me to reach for the kettle. Just a touch, delicate and fleeting, but it left a trail of warmth on my skin that lingered long after her hand had moved away. My stomach tightened, and I realized she knew exactly what she was doing. She was teasing, testing, daring me to read too much into it, but I couldn't help myself. I wanted more. Her presence had a way of making the world shrink. Even the distant hum of traffic or the chirping of birds seemed muted, as if everything around us existed only to frame her. And in that quiet tension, I sensed something unspoken, a bond forming, fragile but insistent, tethered not to words, but to stolen glances, fleeting touches, and the shared acknowledgement that neither of us wanted to admit how much we were aware of each other. She paused mid-step, glanced back, and our eyes met. A long, deliberate look. Then her lips quirked, just slightly, and she said nothing. The electricity between us didn't crack or fade, it thickened. I wasn't supposed to feel this, not this strongly, not this clearly. And yet I did. I thought I had learned restraint. I thought I could stand there, under the fading light, and keep my hands to myself, my thoughts in check. But restraint felt laughable the moment Marianne leaned over to set down a tray of iced tea, and our fingers brushed, again. Only this time, neither of us moved away. We lingered, suspended, like the air itself had grown heavier. A sound behind us shattered the fragile bubble. The screen door rattled, and I whipped my head toward the kitchen. Her hand shot back instinctively, and our eyes met, wide, for the briefest second. A neighbor's voice called out, faintly muffled by the house, and she stepped back, folding her arms in front of her chest, eyes darting anywhere but mine. My pulse hammered. The closeness, the heat between us, vanished too quickly, leaving only the ache of what almost happened. "I didn't hear anything," I muttered, voice tight, though my heart raced like it had been sprinting. She didn't answer immediately. She was tense, body rigid, every muscle coiled with something I couldn't name. My own hands trembled slightly as I held the railing, pretending to inspect a loose slat of wood while watching her from the corner of my eye. The porch felt smaller now, as if the world had closed in around us, magnifying every inch between us. I wanted to close the distance again, to feel the warmth of her shoulder brushing mine, to lean into the subtle scent of her perfume that clung to the fabric of her clothes. But guilt pricked at the edges of my desire, sharp and sudden, the age difference, the social rules, the whispers of a world outside this porch that would never understand. Still, our eyes kept finding each other. She shifted slightly closer under the pretense of arranging the tray, and I caught the fleeting warmth of her arm near mine. My chest tightened. My fingers twitched with the need to reach for her, and for a heartbeat I almost did. Almost leaned in. Almost let the moment tip into something undeniable. But she pulled back slightly, the ghost of a smile on her lips, teasing yet careful. That small movement, retreat and invitation in one, set my mind spinning. Her gaze flicked downward, then back to mine, lingering. I wanted to ask her why she did this, why she let me hover on the edge of her world and then pulled away. But I didn't. Words felt impossible, inadequate. All I could do was stand there, sensing the heat radiating from her, feeling it ignite something inside me that both terrified and exhilarated me. A long silence stretched between us. The faint clink of ice in her glass, the soft creak of the porch under her weight, the whisper of the evening breeze, all felt amplified, each beat of time emphasizing how close we were, how dangerously close. My breath caught when she adjusted her stance, shoulder brushing mine almost imperceptibly, yet enough that it left a trail of warmth in its wake. "I should probably," she started, voice soft, almost swallowed by the hum of the evening. Then she paused, tilting her head, eyes locked with mine. I felt her hesitation like an electric current, as if she was about to say something she couldn't, or something she might regret. Instead, she let the words die. She didn't move away fully, and neither did I. We stayed like that, shoulder to shoulder, a hair's breadth from crossing boundaries either of us could name aloud. The space between us was charged, each heartbeat loud, each inhalation a risk. And somehow, despite the fear, the guilt, the impossibility of it all, we had never felt closer. Closer than we'd ever dared, closer than either of us could admit, even to ourselves. The evening had thickened into a velvet hush. The sun had slipped below the horizon, leaving the porch lit only by the soft glow of a single lantern. I could feel her presence beside me like a live wire, each movement she made sending sparks along my skin. My fingers itched for contact, yet I stayed frozen, unsure whether to act or to flee. She was arranging the cushions on the swing, a delicate motion, but I noticed how her shoulder brushed mine with each turn. My chest tightened every time she leaned just slightly closer. And then, without thinking, my hand moved, an impulse stronger than reason, and I brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. The tip of my fingers lingered on her cheek, tracing the curve of her jaw. She inhaled sharply, lips parting almost imperceptibly. "I shouldn't let myself," she murmured, though her voice trembled just enough to betray her restraint. She tried to step back, but I shifted with her, the swing of her body leaning into mine as if she couldn't quite separate herself. My pulse roared. Every instinct I had screamed to close the remaining distance, to tilt my head, to feel her warmth pressed against me. "I can't," I whispered, low enough that only she could hear, though my voice cracked under the weight of it. My hand trembled slightly as I rested it against the small of her back. "I've wanted this, for so long." Her eyes widened, shimmering in the soft light, and for a moment she looked like she might cry or laugh, I couldn't tell which. She wanted to pull away, but her hand pressed briefly against my chest, stopping me. That touch, gentle and fleeting, held a universe of meaning. A mixture of permission and warning, invitation and restraint. She started, her voice faltering. Her lips hovered close to mine, and the scent of her, warm, faintly floral, undeniably intoxicating, filled my senses. My hands wanted to cup her face, to anchor her against me, but something fragile inside her, something careful and cautious, held me back from moving too fast. The air around us was taut, every breath synchronized, every heartbeat thundering in rhythm with the pull between us. Her shoulder brushed mine again, her hair grazing my lips as I leaned closer, drawn by the gravity of desire and the impossible magnetism of her nearness. She didn't stop me. She didn't move away. And yet, she didn't move closer either. She whispered again, almost breaking, almost surrendering. My throat went dry. Every rational thought evaporated, leaving only the raw tension pressing us together. I could feel the warmth of her body, smell the faint trace of her perfume mingled with the summer air, taste the anticipation that clung to her lips mere inches from mine. I had never been this close to anyone. Not this alive, not this raw, not this vulnerable. And I knew that if I leaned in now, if I closed the space, there would be no undoing it. Then, at that exact moment, her eyes flicked toward the lantern, toward the open doorway beyond the porch, as if sensing something, or someone, watching. A shadow of hesitation passed over her face. My hand tightened slightly against the small of her back. She exhaled slowly, a shiver running along her spine that pressed her just slightly closer. I could feel her pulse beneath my fingers. Her lips trembled. Mine itched to brush against hers. The distance was unbearable. And then, just as I leaned in, her whisper, barely audible but impossible to ignore. "Are you sure?" Time slowed. My heart thudded like a drum. My head tilted. Her breath hitched. And the world seemed to shrink until it was just the two of us, the air between us humming with everything we hadn't said, everything we had been too scared to do. The next morning felt different. I stepped onto the porch, expecting the same quiet ritual, the same slow hum of tension between us. Instead, I found Marianne standing rigidly near the railing, eyes fixed somewhere past me. Her lips were pressed together, as if she had rehearsed something, or fought against saying it. "Good morning," I said softly, my voice uncertain. I felt a tremor in my fingers and tried to ignore it. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she shifted, brushing past me so closely that the heat of her side pressed against mine. I froze. Every instinct I had screamed at me to reach for her, to stop her, but I didn't. Her hand brushed the small of my back as she moved, a whisper of contact that made my chest tighten. Then she turned, eyes wide and vulnerable. "I need to tell you something," she said, voice low, almost quivering. My stomach flipped. Something in her tone made my throat dry. "What is it?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. Her gaze flicked away, then back to me. "Yesterday, someone was listening," she admitted, a faint flush rising across her cheeks. She avoided saying more, but her fingers twitched at her sides, brushing against the railing, betraying her composure. I realized she meant the neighbor, Or maybe one of the staff inside. Someone had overheard the whispers, the closeness, the almost confessions we had tried to keep private. I swallowed hard, a cold knot tightening in my gut. The safe bubble we had built, the world that had existed only for us, was gone. And yet, when I stepped closer, her breath hitched slightly. Her chest rose just enough to press against mine in the faintest, accidental way. My fingers itched to reach for her face, to trace the outline of her jaw, but I paused, barely daring to breathe. "I didn't think they heard," I whispered. My voice shook, betraying more desire than fear, though the fear was real, fear of what this revelation might mean, fear of judgment, fear of the impossible path we were treading. Her hand lifted, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The movement was almost tender, almost intimate, and I could feel the faint tremor in her fingers. Her eyes searched mine, seeking something. I wasn't sure if it was reassurance, understanding, or permission. My heart ached at the vulnerability she exposed, at the way she let me see her in a state so raw and fragile. "I can't," she started, voice breaking slightly. Her lips quivered, a hint of the longing she had tried to hide slipping through. "I don't know if us, is safe anymore." I stepped closer, so close that the faint scent of her perfume wrapped around me like a second skin. My hand brushed hers accidentally, or maybe not, lingering for a fraction longer than it should. She didn't pull away immediately, and the spark between us flared brighter, hotter, impossible to ignore. "I don't care about safe," I said, low, almost rough, my lips dangerously close to her ear. "I care about you." Her body stiffened, but then she leaned in slightly, almost imperceptibly, pressing the barest edge of herself against me. Every nerve ending screamed, every instinct urged me forward, but reason and restraint battled for dominance. She closed her eyes for a second, exhaling slowly, and I felt her tremble, not from fear alone, but from desire too. That mix of hesitation and temptation, of risk and need, made the world shrink until it was only the two of us. I shouldn't," she whispered, but her shoulder pressed tighter against mine, her hand lingering near my chest. And in that charged, electric silence, I realized we were both on the edge. The revelation, the risk, the fear, it had only pulled us closer. Nothing between us could be ignored anymore. I tilted my head, heart hammering, feeling her pulse against my fingers. She met my gaze, and the air between us vibrated with an unspoken choice: move forward, or retreat. And I knew, somehow, that one way or another, we wouldn't be able to stop what was coming. The lantern cast a warm, trembling light over the porch, throwing long shadows that flickered across Marianne's face. Every detail of her, the tilt of her head, the curve of her lips, the way her eyes searched mine, was suddenly sharper, unavoidable. I could feel her breathing, soft but steady, and the faint warmth radiating from her body pulled at me like a tide I couldn't resist. We were inches apart. My hand hovered near her cheek, trembling slightly, and hers lingered near my chest as if testing, measuring, daring me to make the next move. The air between us was dense, heavy with everything we hadn't said, everything we had almost done, and everything we both wanted but feared. I started, voice low, barely more than a whisper, though it carried all the weight of the weeks we'd spent circling each other. My hand finally found her jawline, soft and warm, brushing away a stray lock of hair. She leaned into the touch, just slightly, enough that my pulse thudded painfully in my ears. Her lips parted, a subtle invitation, but her eyes held the hesitation I knew so well, years of restraint, caution, and self-protection clinging to her like armor. "Are we sure?" she whispered back, mirroring my uncertainty, her voice trembling but deliberate. I could see the conflict in her, desire fighting duty, want clashing with fear. And I realized that I was no different. Every nerve ending in my body screamed to close the distance, to feel her fully, yet part of me recoiled at the danger of it all, the impossibility, the world outside our porch, the age gap that would raise eyebrows and questions. But the truth of her presence, the truth of this moment, was undeniable. I could feel it in the way her body pressed almost imperceptibly closer, in the heat of her shoulder brushing mine, in the way her hand lingered over mine, as if asking permission without words. "I can't," she murmured, then exhaled sharply, leaning her forehead against mine, letting the tiniest tremor run through her. My chest tightened. The choice had been laid bare: step back and preserve safety, or step forward and risk everything for this impossible connection. I let my voice drop, low and steady, brushing against her ear. "Then don't step back." My fingers traced the line of her jaw, lingering at her temple, and I felt her inhale sharply, leaning just enough into my hand that restraint became meaningless. Time slowed. The world outside the porch ceased to exist. There were no neighbors, no rules, no expectations, only the two of us, breathing in rhythm, every inch of space between us charged with unspoken need and accumulated longing. Her lips were just a breath away. Our foreheads rested together. The tremor in her hand matched my own. And for the first time, everything felt simple, everything felt human, messy, real. We had circled the fire for weeks, but now, finally, we were choosing it, choosing each other. She didn't pull away. I didn't hesitate. And in that electric, suspended heartbeat, the world tilted. We didn't need words. We understood each other completely. Her fears, my obsession, the long, slow ache that had been building between us, now unstoppable. I pressed a kiss to her temple instead, slow, reverent, letting her exhale against me. She closed her eyes, leaning fully into the warmth, a shiver running down her spine. The choice had been made, not perfect, not without risk, but ours. We didn't need to speak. The air between us hummed with clarity, desire acknowledged, boundaries respected, connection absolute. And for the first time, I knew exactly who she was, and she knew exactly who I had become in her presence. The sun had dipped completely, leaving only the soft glow of the porch lantern to cast its golden warmth across Marianne's face. I sat beside her on the swing, our shoulders brushing lightly, the faintest electricity still lingering from the moment we had finally let ourselves be close. She didn't speak at first. Neither did I. We let the quiet settle, letting the world beyond the porch recede until it was just the two of us, together, tethered by weeks of anticipation, longing, and unspoken words finally given room to breathe. Her hand found mine naturally, fingers curling around mine with a tentative certainty that made my chest ache in the best possible way. I squeezed gently, feeling the warmth of her skin seep into mine, the pressure unspoken but full of meaning. "I was afraid," she whispered finally, leaning her forehead against my shoulder. Her breath tickled my neck, soft and intimate. "Of what this could mean. Of what I wanted. Of you." I let out a small laugh, low and relieved, brushing a hand against her hair, tucking a loose strand behind her ear. "I was afraid too," I admitted. "Afraid I'd ruin it, or scare you away. But I couldn't stay away either." She shifted closer, letting her head rest on my chest. The warmth of her presence, the steady rise and fall of her breathing, made every worry, every hesitation, feel distant. I wrapped an arm around her, pulling her just slightly closer, feeling the weight of her body settle against mine. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't rushed, it was steady, human, and real. For the first time, I could see the relief in her eyes, the softness that had been there all along, hidden beneath layers of caution. I pressed a gentle kiss to her temple, feeling her lean into it as if it could erase the last of her doubt. I understand now," she murmured, her lips brushing the edge of my collarbone. It's okay, us. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. I smiled, chest tightening, and brushed my thumb over the back of her hand. Exactly, I whispered. And we'll figure everything else out together. We stayed like that for a long while, shoulders pressed, fingers intertwined, letting the silence between us hum with a contentment that was new and fragile and utterly ours. The porch, once a place of tension and almost moments, now felt like home. When she lifted her head, I saw the faint blush still lingering across her cheeks, the same soft glow in her eyes I'd noticed from the very beginning. I reached up, resting my forehead against hers. The contact was light, tender, full of everything we hadn't said but had finally shared in small gestures, touches, and whispered words. I'm glad you kept coming here, she said softly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Even when I thought you shouldn't. I laughed quietly, pressing another kiss to her temple. Neither of us could stop. Neither of us wanted to. And in that moment, everything felt settled, not perfect, not without complications, but complete. We were together, fully present, understanding each other in a way that nothing else could have taught us. The swing creaked softly as we leaned into each other, the night humming around us, a quiet witness to the beginning of something real. Fingers intertwined, foreheads pressed together, breaths mingling in the soft evening air, we simply existed, close, warm, and undeniably ours.